Damon Valentine's hands trembled as he gripped his phone in the sterile hospital corridor. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, a sound that would haunt him for years. Through the small window of the ICU, he could see his 7-year-old daughter Lily, her small chest rising and falling with the help of machines. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily, each sound a reminder that time was running out. Dr. Theodore Dyer had been clear an hour ago. Lily had a congenital heart defect that had gone undetected until now. The aortic valve was failing. Without immediate surgery, she had maybe 2 weeks. With surgery, she had a future. The cost, $12,000 up front, with insurance covering the rest. Damon's insurance had a high deductible, and his small architectural consulting firm had been struggling since losing a major client 6 months ago. He had $4,000 in savings. He needed 8 more. He'd already called the bank. Denied. His credit was maxed from keeping the business afloat. His parents were dead, gone in a car accident when he was 25, before he'd even met Autumn. His sister lived in Seattle with 3 kids of her own, barely scraping by. That left one option. Damon dialed his wife's father first. Howard Randall answered on the 3rd ring, his voice carrying that particular brand of irritation reserved for interruptions. Damon. What is it? We're at the club. Howard, it's Lily. She needs emergency heart surgery. The doctors say. How much? Damon swallowed his pride. He'd spent 10 years swallowing it around the Randalls. $12,000. I have 4. I just need. No. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Howard, please. She's your granddaughter. She's 7 years old. If we don't, Carol and I are saving for our Mediterranean cruise. We've had a plan for 2 years. Besides, Damon, this is what happens when you don't plan properly. You should have built a better financial cushion. Damon's jaw clenched. This isn't about planning. It's about Lily's life. Everything is about planning. You chose to marry our daughter despite our reservations. You chose to start a business that barely breaks even. You chose to have a child you apparently can't afford to take care of. These are consequences, son. Learn from them. The line went dead. Damon stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear. In his 26 years of marriage to Autumn, he'd endured countless slights from her family. They made it clear from the beginning that he wasn't good enough. A middle-class kid from Ohio with a state school degree trying to marry into Connecticut old money. But this was a new depth of cruelty he hadn't known existed. His hand shook as he dialed Carol Randall's cell. Maybe she'd be different. Maybe a grandmother's love would override whatever contempt she held for him. Damon. Carol's voice was clipped, annoyed. Howard just called me. The answer is no. Carol, please just listen. I don't need to listen. Children die every day, Damon. It's tragic, but it's life. You can't expect us to derail our plans every time there's a crisis. We've worked hard for our retirement. We deserve to enjoy it. She's your granddaughter, Damon repeated, his voice cracking. And we've been lovely grandparents. We sent gifts at Christmas and birthdays. We attended her recital last year. But this is crossing a line. You're being dramatic. The hospital will work out a payment plan. They always do. Stop being so hysterical. The casual dismissal of his daughter's life, reduced to dramatics, to hysteria, sent ice through Damon's veins. I hope you enjoy your cruise, he said quietly, and ended the call. One more. Harris Randall, Autumn's older brother. He worked in insurance, ironically enough. Surely he'd understand the system, understand how these things worked. Harris answered with his typical aggressive cheer. Little brother, what can I do for you? Damon explained the situation again, his voice growing more hollow with each retelling. Harris laughed. Actually laughed. Jesus, Damon. Should have had better insurance, buddy. That's insurance 101. You went cheap on your family plan, and now you're paying for it. Literally. Harris, I'm not calling to discuss insurance policies. I need help. Lily needs help. And I'd love to help, but $8 grand? Come on. That's not chump change. I got my own family to think about. My kids' college funds, the new house we're building. Can't just throw money at every problem that comes up. Maybe this is a wake-up call for you to get your financial house in order. My financial house is fine. This is a medical emergency. An emergency you should have been prepared for. Look, I know this sounds harsh, but you made your bed. You married my sister despite having no real money. You started a business in a dying industry, and you had a kid when you were barely stable. Actions have consequences. Damon hung up without another word. He slumped against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the cold linoleum floor. The phone slipped from his hand. Around him, the hospital continued its rhythms. Nurses walking past, machines beeping, somewhere a baby crying. His vision blurred with tears he'd been holding back for hours. Everything he'd built, everything he'd tried to be, a good husband, a good father, a good man, was crumbling. Not because he'd failed, but because he couldn't produce $8,000 in 24 hours. His daughter was dying, and he was helpless. "Excuse me." Damon looked up to see a nurse standing over him. She was maybe 45, with kind eyes and graying auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her scrubs were decorated with tiny hearts. Her name tag read Rosalie Davidson, RN. "I'm sorry," Damon said, wiping his eyes. "I'll move. I know I'm in the way." "You're not in the way." Rosalie sat down beside him on the floor, right there in the middle of the corridor. "I heard your phone calls. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the nurse's station is right there." She gestured down the hall. "I heard everything." Damon felt his face flush with humiliation. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "Don't apologize." Rosalie reached in her purse and pulled out a checkbook. "My shift ends in 20 minutes. Then I'm going to the bank. I have $9,400 in my savings account. It's yours." Damon stared at her, certain he'd misheard. "What? 9,400? It's everything I've saved over the past 5 years. I was saving for a down payment on a condo, but Lily needs it more than I need to stop renting." Rosalie was already writing out the check. "I can't. You can't." Damon's brain couldn't process what was happening. "You don't even know us. I know that little girl in there has a father who would do anything to save her. I know that people who are supposed to love you just told you your child's life isn't worth interrupting a vacation. And I know that I've been a cardiac nurse for 23 years, and I will not watch another child die because of money when I have money sitting in a bank doing nothing." She finished writing the check and handed it to him. $9,400. Made out to Damon Valentine. "I don't know how to repay you," Damon whispered. "Pay it forward someday. That's all." Rosalie stood, brushing off her scrubs. "I'll figure out the rest of the money. Give me until morning. I have some jewelry I can pawn, and my brother owes me from when I helped him last year. We'll get Lily her surgery." Damon couldn't speak. He just nodded, holding the check like it was made of glass. Rosalie smiled. "Your daughter is going to be fine, Mr. Valentine. Dr. Dyer is the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in the state. She's in good hands." She started to walk away, then turned back. "And Mr. Valentine? Those people on the phone? They showed you exactly who they are. Believe them." The surgery took 8 hours. Damon sat in the waiting room with Autumn, who'd arrived from her yoga retreat upstate once he'd finally gotten through to her. She'd been shocked, tearful, appropriately distraught. But she'd also been defensive when he told her about the phone calls. "I'm sure they didn't mean it the way it sounded," Autumn said, gripping her herbal tea. "You know how Dad gets when he's stressed about money. And Mama's been anxious about the cruise. She's been planning it for years. Our daughter almost died, Autumn. I know that. But they're not monsters. They have different priorities." Damon looked at his wife, really looked at her. They'd met in college, 2 kids from different worlds. He'd been drawn to her grace, her sophistication, the way she seemed to glide through life with confidence he'd never known. She told him she wanted something different from her family stuffiness, wanted someone real. But somewhere over the years, she drifted back toward them. Every decision they made was filtered through what would my parents think. Every vacation, every purchase, every choice about Lily's schooling. The Randalls' approval had become the measure of all things. "Different priorities," Damon repeated softly. "Right." When Dr. Dyer finally emerged, still in his surgical scrubs, his face was tired but smiling. "The surgery went perfectly. We replaced the valve. She'll need to be monitored, but I expect a full recovery." Damon had cried then, really cried, deep sobs of relief that shook his whole body. Autumn had held him, and for a moment, they were just 2 parents grateful their child would live. But the moment passed. Over the next 2 days, as Lily recovered in the ICU, the Randalls descended. They brought flowers and stuffed animals, cooing over their granddaughter. Howard Randall even went so far as to put his hand on Damon's shoulder and say, "Glad it all worked out, son. See? Told you the hospital would figure something out." Damon had stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for the acknowledgement of what had actually happened. It never came. Carol Randall fussed over Lily's hair, promising to take her shopping for new clothes once she was recovered. "You poor thing, having to be in this dreadful place. Grandma will make it all better." Harris Randall brought a ridiculously expensive teddy bear and spent 20 minutes talking about the insurance claim process, offering advice Damon hadn't asked for and didn't need. None of them mentioned the phone calls. None of them mentioned their refusals. None of them asked how Damon had come up with the money. It was Autumn who told them about Rosalie, glowing with the story. "This amazing nurse gave us her entire life savings. Can you believe it? A complete stranger." The Randalls had reacted with appropriate surprise and gratitude, but Damon saw something else in their eyes. Satisfaction, maybe, or vindication. See? They didn't need to help. Someone else did it. Their refusal was justified retroactively by Rosalie's generosity. On the third day, Rosalie stopped by during her shift. She brought a small stuffed rabbit for Lily and spent 15 minutes talking to her about being brave, about the surgery, about how strong her heart was now. When she left, Lily said, "I like her, Daddy. She's nice. She is sweetheart. She's the nicest person I've ever met." That night, after Autumn had gone home to shower and change, Damon sat in the dim hospital room watching Lily sleep. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily, that beautiful, regular rhythm of a healthy heartbeat. He thought about Rosalie Davidson, who'd given away everything she had for a child she didn't know. He thought about Howard and Carol Randall, preparing for their Mediterranean cruise. He thought about Harris Randall, building his new house. He thought about Autumn, making excuses, smoothing over, pretending. And he thought about what Rosalie had said. They showed you exactly who they are. Believe them. Damon believed them now. Something had shifted in him during those hours in the corridor, during those phone calls, during the surgery. Something fundamental about how he saw the world and his place in it. He'd spent 10 years trying to be good enough for the Randalls, trying to prove himself worthy of their daughter, their approval, their respect. He was done trying, but he wasn't done with them. Damon pulled out his phone and opened a note app. At the top, he typed, "Things I know about the Randalls." Then he started listing everything he'd learned over 10 years of family dinners, holiday gatherings, overheard phone calls, and casual conversations. Howard Randall, CEO of Randall Financial Consultants, a boutique wealth management firm, managed portfolios for about 30 high-net-worth clients. Extremely proud of his reputation. Obsessed with appearances. Mentioned once at Thanksgiving that a scandal could destroy everything he'd built. Carol Randall, president of the Connecticut Women's Foundation, a charity that funded scholarships for underprivileged girls. Very public about her philanthropy. Hosted an annual gala that was covered in society pages. Her social status meant everything to her. Harris Randall, senior VP at Consolidated Insurance Partners. Specialized in high-value policies for commercial properties. Always bragging about his deals, his commissions, his client acquisitions. Competitive to a pathological degree. Autumn worked part-time at an art gallery owned by her mother's friend. Spent most of her time at yoga, book clubs, charity luncheons. Depended entirely on her trust fund for her lifestyle. As Damon typed, his mind started working in ways it hadn't in years. Back in college, he'd been pre-law before switching to architecture. He'd been good at seeing patterns, at finding weaknesses in arguments, at building cases. He'd gotten into architecture because he loved creating things, building things, seeing projects come together piece by piece. Maybe it was time to build something new. A plan started to form, vague and shapeless, but growing clearer with each passing hour. He didn't know the details yet, but he knew the foundation. The Randalls valued their money, their status, their reputations above everything, even their own granddaughter's life. So those were the things he would take from them. Not quickly, not obviously, but methodically, carefully, the way he'd draft blueprints for a building. Every support beam removed, every foundation undermined, until the whole structure came crashing down. And they'd never see it coming. because he was just Damon Valentine, the son-in-law they'd spent a decade dismissing as beneath them. That would be their first mistake. 3 weeks later, Lily was home and recovering beautifully. Her color was back, her energy was returning, and Dr. Dyer declared her progress remarkable. Damon had set up a repayment plan with Rosalie. She'd refused at first, but he'd insisted. $50 a week, every week, until the $9,400 was repaid with interest. It would take years, but he'd pay back every penny. But the repayment plan was just the surface. Damon had started meeting Rosalie for coffee once a week, updates on Lily's health turning into longer conversations about life, work, values. She was a single mother herself. Her son was in his second year of medical school at Johns Hopkins, something she was intensely proud of. She'd been divorced for 15 years, worked double shifts to put him through college, saved every spare penny. "I don't regret it," Rosalie had said during one of their conversations. "Giving you the money, I mean, some people think I'm crazy. My ex-husband called me stupid, but I watched my son almost die from appendicitis when he was 8. I know what it's like to be terrified in a hospital corridor. If I could spare someone else that pain, how could I not?" That simple moral clarity, the idea that helping someone was its own justification, was so foreign to Damon's experience with the Randalls that it almost hurt to contemplate. Meanwhile, Autumn had been pressuring him to attend her parents' annual summer garden party. It was a major event in their social circle. 200 guests on the Randalls' 5-acre estate in Greenwich, catered affairs, string quartets, the whole production. "We have to go, Damon. People will talk if we're not there. And you know how important this is to my mother. Lily just had heart surgery. That was 3 weeks ago. Dr. Dyer said she's doing great. We can get a sitter for a few hours. Please. I promised my mother we'd be there." Damon had agreed, but not for the reasons Autumn thought. He wanted to see the Randalls in their element, surrounded by their wealth and status. He wanted to observe, to learn, to find the cracks in the facade. The party was exactly as awful as he remembered from previous years. The Randalls held court like minor royalty, accepting congratulations on the beautiful weather as if they'd arranged it personally. Carol Randall wore a dress that probably cost more than Lily's entire surgery. Howard Randall smoked cigars with other wealthy men, discussing market trends and investment strategies. Harris Randall cornered Damon near the bar. "How's the little munchkin?" "Lily's doing well." Good, good. Listen, I've been meaning to talk to you. I heard your firm lost the Mercer Building project. That's gotta hurt." Word traveled fast in Connecticut circles. "We lost out on the bid. It happens." Sure. But, if you ever want to talk about pivoting into something more stable, I could set you up with some guys I know in real estate development. Steady paycheck, benefits, the whole package. Might be better for your family situation." The condescension was barely veiled. Harris wanted Damon to give up his business, to admit failure, to become an employee rather than a business owner, to accept his place in the hierarchy. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm good. Suit yourself. Just trying to help." Harris clapped him on the shoulder and moved on to someone more important. Damon spent the rest of the party circulating, listening, observing. He overheard Howard Randall talking to a cluster of men about a new investment opportunity, something about real estate development in New Haven, mixed-use properties, guaranteed returns. Howard was animated, excited, clearly bringing in his clients. He watched Carol Randall charm donors, working the crowd for her foundation. She was good at it, Damon had to admit. She had a way of making each person feel special, valued. The same skill she'd used to tell him his daughter's life wasn't worth missing a cruise. As the sun set and lanterns lit the garden, Autumn found him standing alone by the koi pond. "You've been quiet all night. Are you okay?" "Just tired. I know you're still upset about the money thing, but you have to let go. My family is who they are. They weren't trying to be cruel." Damon looked at his wife, really looked at her. She believed what she was saying. The cognitive dissonance required to hear your parents say children die every day about your own daughter and then rationalize it as just who they are was staggering. "Autumn, do you remember when we first got married? You said you wanted to build a life different from your family's?" "Of course. And we did. We live in Stamford, not Greenwich. You have your business. We're not dependent on them. Aren't we? Every decision we make, you consult them. Every vacation, every school choice, every birthday party for Lily, it all goes through your mother first. That's not true. I just value their opinion. Even when their opinion is that our daughter's life isn't worth $8,000. Autumn's face flushed. That's not fair. You're twisting what happened. Am I? What part am I twisting? They were surprised. Caught off guard. If you'd approached it differently, if you'd given them time to think about it. Lily didn't have time. Autumn's eyes filled with tears. Why are you being like this? Why can't you just be grateful we got through it? Why do you have to keep punishing everyone? That was the moment Damon realized his marriage was over. Maybe it had been over for years, and he'd been too invested in the dream of what it could be to notice. But standing there, watching Autumn defend her family's indefensible cruelty, he saw clearly. She would always choose them. Every time. Without question. I'm not punishing anyone, Damon said quietly. I'm just finally seeing things clearly. Over the next 2 months, Damon threw himself into research with a focus he hadn't felt in years. He started with public records, financial disclosures, property records, business filings. The Randalls were wealthy, but not as wealthy as they appeared. Howard's firm managed money well, but his own investments were more conservative than his advice to clients. Interesting. He created a fake LinkedIn profile. Nicholas Christian, a wealth management headhunter from Boston. He reached out to former employees of Randall Financial Consultants. 3 responded. 2 had nothing but praise. The third, a woman named Jenna Melton who'd worked there 5 years ago, was willing to talk over the phone. Look, I don't want to badmouth anyone, Jenna said. But you're doing due diligence on Howard Randall. You should know some things. I'm listening. The firm has a reputation for being conservative, right? Safe investments, steady returns. That's the public face. But Howard has a side operation. High-risk, high-reward investments that he only offers to select clients. The ones who can afford to lose big. He makes enormous commissions on these deals. Is that illegal? Not exactly. But it's ethically gray. He's pushing investments he wouldn't touch personally, taking his cut, and if they go south, well, caveat emptor. And some of them have gone south. I left because I couldn't stomach it anymore. Damon made notes. What kind of investments? Startup equity, foreign currency plays, cryptocurrency before it was mainstream, real estate developments in questionable markets. Anything with a prospectus that promises the moon. And his current clients? I've been out for 5 years, so I don't know specifics. But leopards don't change spots. After the call, Damon sat back and thought. Howard was a risk-taker hiding behind a conservative facade. That was useful information. Next, he researched Carol Randall's foundation. The Connecticut Women's Foundation had an impressive website, glowing testimonials from scholarship recipients, photos from the annual gala. But Damon had learned enough in his years running a business to read a Form 990. The foundation's tax filings were public record. What he found made his pulse quicken. The foundation raised about $500,000 annually through the gala and private donations. According to the 990, they distributed roughly $60,000 in scholarships. Administrative costs accounted for another $100,000. That left nearly $340,000 unaccounted for, listed vaguely as program expenses and community outreach. Damon wasn't a forensic accountant, but he knew padding. He knew the difference between legitimate expenses and someone using a nonprofit as a personal slush fund. He dug deeper, cross-referencing vendors listed in the foundation's filings. Randall Event Planning LLC, that was Carol's personal company, paid $80,000 annually to organize the gala. Greenwich Consulting Group, owned by Howard's brother, paid $60,000 for undefined consulting services. Randall Family Trust, recipient of a $40,000 grant for administrative support. The foundation was a tax dodge. Carol Randall wasn't some philanthropic saint. She was using underprivileged girls as props to fund her lifestyle while taking a tax deduction. The rage that filled Damon then was cold and clarifying. These people had looked him in the eye and said his daughter's life wasn't worth $8,000 while they were stealing $300,000 annually from a charity meant to help children. Harris Randall proved harder to crack at first. Insurance was a regulated industry, and there wasn't much public record beyond his professional licenses. But Damon remembered something. Harris had bragged at a Christmas party about a major commercial policy he'd written for a development in Bridgeport. Something about it being the biggest commission of his career. Damon spent 3 weeks tracking down that deal. The property was a mixed-use development called Harbor Commons. The insurance policy had been written 2 years ago. The building had burned down 18 months ago under suspicious circumstances. The insurance payout had been massive, $12 million. That wasn't unusual by itself, but Damon started pulling threads. The developer who owned Harbor Commons was a company called Trinity Development Group. The principals of Trinity were 2 brothers, Waldo and Edison Dean. Waldo Dean had been indicted 6 months ago for insurance fraud on an unrelated property in New Haven. Harris Randall had written the policy. The property had burned down. Harris had received his commission. The developer was now under investigation. There was no evidence Harris had known about the fraud, but the timing was interesting, and Harris was aggressive, competitive, willing to cut corners. If an opportunity had presented itself, Damon filed all this information away, building his case file like he was preparing for trial. The final piece came from an unexpected source. Rosalie Davidson invited him to her son's birthday dinner. Wes was turning 24. Damon brought Lily, and Autumn agreed to come after some persuasion. At dinner, Wes mentioned he was doing his clinical rotations. "I'm at Greenwich Hospital right now. It's good experience, but man, some of the staff politics are intense." "Oh," Damon asked, only half listening. "Yeah, there's this whole thing with the cardiac wing and some foundation grant. The nurses are all upset because the money was supposed to go toward equipment upgrades, but it got diverted to some administrative fund instead." Damon's attention sharpened. "What foundation?" I don't remember the name. Something Women's Foundation? They give grants to medical programs. The cardiac wing was supposed to get new monitoring equipment, but the hospital administration redirected the money. Autumn spoke up. "The Connecticut Women's Foundation? That's my mother's charity." "Oh, cool. Yeah, that might be it." The nurses were pretty mad. One of them said the foundation grants are supposed to be restricted funds, so redirecting them might be illegal or something. After dinner, Damon researched foundation grants. Sure enough, the Connecticut Women's Foundation had given a $100,000 medical equipment grant to Greenwich Hospital 2 years ago. The 990 listed it as a restricted grant for cardiac equipment. But the equipment had never materialized. The money had vanished into the hospital's general fund. That wasn't just tax fraud. That was grant fraud, potentially wire fraud if federal money was involved. And Carol Randall, as president of the foundation, was responsible for ensuring grant money was used as specified. Damon now had enough. 3 separate vulnerabilities, 3 members of the Randall family, all interconnected. All he needed was the right pressure points and the right timing. And he needed to protect Lily and himself from a fallout. That meant the marriage had to end first. Damon filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning in late August. He consulted with 3 lawyers before finding one who understood what he needed. Her name was Kay Wall, a shark in a blazer who specialized in high-conflict divorces. "You're sure about this?" Kay had asked during their first meeting. "I'm sure. The Randalls will fight. They'll make it ugly. Let them." Autumn's reaction was predictable. Shock, tears, accusations. "How can you do this now? Lily just recovered. We need to be a family." "We haven't been a family in a long time, Autumn. We've been me trying to earn your family's approval while they treat me like I'm beneath them." "That's not true. You're being paranoid and vindictive. Your father told me our daughter's life wasn't worth interrupting his vacation. Your mother said children die every day. Your brother laughed at me, and you defended them. I didn't defend them. I try to help you understand their perspective." Exactly. The divorce proceedings were brutal. The Randalls hired a team of lawyers to destroy him. They painted him as an unstable provider, a failing businessman, a vindictive husband. They fought for sole custody of Lily, claiming Damon was emotionally unfit. But Kay Wall was better. She documented everything. The phone calls, Damon had recorded them, legal in Connecticut with one-party consent. The financial records showing Damon had been the primary provider despite his modest income. The Randalls' own statements about prioritizing their cruise over their granddaughter. The custody hearing was where it all came out. Autumn's lawyer tried to paint Damon as bitter and unstable. Kay played the recordings. The judge's face had transformed as he listened to Howard Randall dismiss his granddaughter's life, to Carol Randall say, "Children die every day," to Harris Randall laugh and suggest Damon should have had better insurance. "And where did the money for the surgery ultimately come from?" the judge asked. "A nurse who'd never met my daughter gave us her entire life savings," Damon said. $9,400. "A stranger cared more about my daughter's life than her own family did." The judge awarded Damon primary custody. Autumn got weekends and holidays. The Randalls were present for the ruling. Carol Randall actually gasped. Howard Randall's face turned purple. Harris Randall looked like he'd been slapped. After the hearing, in the courthouse hallway, Howard Randall confronted Damon. "You'll regret this. You've made an enemy of the wrong family." Damon looked at him calmly. "No, Howard. You made an enemy when you told me my daughter's life wasn't worth $8,000. I'm just finally doing something about it." As he walked away, he heard Carol Randall say to Autumn, "This is what happens when you marry beneath your station." That night, Damon sat down with his case files and began planning the final phase. The Randalls wanted war. He'd give them war, but not the kind they expected. He started with Howard. Damon's plan for Howard Randall was elegant in its simplicity. Let Howard destroy himself. He learned from Jenna Melton that Howard pushed risky investments to clients who could afford to lose. But Howard himself stayed conservative. That suggested fear. Howard knew these investments were dangerous but couldn't resist the commissions. It also suggested hubris. Howard thought he was smart enough to manage the risk for others without touching it himself. Damon created another identity, Ambrose Rivers, a tech entrepreneur who just sold a startup for $30 million and was looking for aggressive wealth management. He built an entire online presence. LinkedIn profile with fake endorsements, a personal website, mentions and obscure tech blogs he paid to publish. It took 6 weeks and cost him $5,000 he didn't really have. Then Ambrose Rivers reached out to Randall Financial Consultants looking for representation. Howard Randall took the meeting himself. Damon watched from across the street as his fake persona, played by a struggling actor named Ty Cheney he'd hired for $500, walked into Howard's office building in Greenwich. Ty had been thoroughly briefed. He was a tech bro with more money than sense, looking for high-growth opportunities and aggressive portfolio optimization. He wanted to turn his $30 million into $100 million in 5 years. He didn't care about risk. According to Ty's report afterward, Howard had practically salivated. Over the next month, Ambrose Rivers became Howard's prize client. Ty met with him weekly, each time expressing more enthusiasm for risky plays. Howard recommended a series of investments, a cryptocurrency fund, equity in a Latin American mining operation, a stake in a speculative real estate development in Dubai. Ambrose agreed to everything. He wired money, real money that Damon had borrowed against his business, and every asset he had, money that made him sick to risk, into the investment accounts. The real beauty of the plan was that these were all legitimate investments Howard genuinely recommended. Damon wasn't creating anything fake. He was simply being the perfect client, someone who wanted exactly what Howard was selling. Then came the twist. After 2 months of building trust, Ambrose came to Howard with an opportunity. A friend of his, another tech entrepreneur, was looking for investment in a revolutionary new blockchain platform for medical records. It was pre-IPO, ground floor opportunity, guaranteed to explode once it went public. The minimum investment was $5 million. Ambrose was putting in 10. Did Howard want in? Howard was skeptical at first. This wasn't his deal. It was being brought to him. But Ambrose had built enough trust, and the opportunity was too good. Besides, if Ambrose was putting in $10 million of his own money, Howard invested $2 million, his personal money, not client funds. Money he'd earned in commissions and bonuses over decades. He even recommended it to his top 3 clients, making another $1 million in fees. The blockchain platform was real. Damon had spent 3 months setting it up with the help of 2 college friends who'd actually gone into tech. They'd created a functioning prototype, filed the necessary paperwork, built partnerships with real companies. It wasn't a scam. It was a genuine startup. It was also designed to fail. The medical records market was saturated. The technology was derivative. The business model was flawed. Damon and his friends had built something that looked good on paper, but wouldn't survive contact with reality. 6 months after Howard invested, the company folded. New regulations made their approach unviable. Their technology was obsolete before launch. It happened to startups every day. Howard Randall lost $2 million. His 3 clients lost $5 million combined. The lawsuits started immediately. The clients claimed Howard had misrepresented the investment, that he'd recommended something without proper due diligence. They demanded their money back. Howard tried to defend himself, but the paper trail was damning. He'd pushed the investment hard. He'd made guarantees he shouldn't have made. He'd let his enthusiasm override his judgment. The Connecticut Securities Division opened an investigation. Other clients started asking questions about previous investments. The conservative, trustworthy image Howard had cultivated for 30 years crumbled in weeks. Randall Financial Consultants lost half its clients in 3 months. Howard's professional reputation was destroyed. He faced civil suits, regulatory sanctions, and the very real possibility of losing his license. Damon watched it all unfold from a distance, careful never to leave a trace connecting him to Ambrose Rivers. Ty Cheney had been paid in cash and had signed an NDA. The tech friends who'd helped with the blockchain company didn't know about Damon's connection to Howard. The money Damon had invested was lost, a sacrifice he'd accepted, but Ambrose Rivers was just another disappointed investor in a failed startup. When Howard Randall's name appeared in the local business section under the headline, "Local Financial Advisor Faces Sanctions After Client Losses," Damon felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just cold acknowledgement that the first pillar was down. 1 down, 2 to go. Carol Randall was next, and she was trickier. The foundation fraud was there, but proving it required more than Damon could do alone. He needed someone inside the system. That's when he thought of Rosalie. They've been having coffee regularly for months now. The weekly repayment meetings had evolved into genuine friendship. Rosalie had been through her own difficult divorce, had struggled as a single mother, had worked in the medical system long enough to see how money-corrupted institutions meant to help people. When Damon finally told her what he discovered about the Connecticut Women's Foundation, sitting in her modest apartment, showing her the financial documents, the grant misappropriation, the vendor fraud, she'd been quiet for a long time. "You're sure about this?" she finally asked. "I'm sure. I've triple-checked everything. Carol Randall is stealing from a charity meant to help underprivileged girls. She's using their scholarship fund to pay herself and her family. And you want me to help you expose her? I can't do it alone. I'm her son-in-law. Anything I report looks like vindictive divorce fallout. But you're a respected nurse with no connection to the family. If you raise concerns about the foundation's grants to Greenwich Hospital, if you pointed out that promised medical equipment was never delivered, it could trigger an audit. It could." Rosalie had stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the parking lot of her apartment complex. "You know what I save for now, since I gave you my savings? I save for other people. Every month, I put money aside for the next family I hear crying in a hospital corridor. There's always a next family. I know, and you're telling me Carol Randall pretends to help families while actually stealing from them?" "Yes." Rosalie turned back to face him. "Then let's burn her down." The complaint was filed 3 weeks later. Rosalie, as a concerned nurse who'd witnessed the grant misappropriation, wrote a detailed letter to the Connecticut Attorney General's office outlining her concerns about the Connecticut Women's Foundation. She included documentation about the promised medical equipment that had never materialized, questions about the foundation's spending ratios, and respectful requests for investigation. The AG's office loved this kind of case. High society charity fraud made headlines and was easy to prosecute. They opened an investigation immediately. Meanwhile, Damon took a second approach. He'd found a reporter at the Hartford Courant named Daisy Berry who specialized in nonprofit investigations. He sent her an anonymous tip with copies of the foundation's 990s and a breakdown of the questionable expenses. Daisy Berry was a tenacious journalist. She started calling vendors listed in the foundation's filings, asking questions about their services. She requested interviews with scholarship recipients. She filed Freedom of Information requests for any government grants the foundation had received. The article ran on a Sunday morning. Greenwich Foundation's charity claims don't add up. It was devastating. Barry had documented everything. The inflated administrative costs, the payments to family-owned companies, the grant money that never reached its intended recipients, the scholarship fund that awarded $60,000 while raising $500,000. Carol Randall's initial response was defiant. She claimed the article was full of inaccuracies, that the reporter didn't understand how nonprofit finance worked, that administrative costs were necessary for effective programming. But the Attorney General's investigation gave the story credibility. Other media outlets picked it up. Previous scholarship recipients were interviewed. Some had glowing things to say, but others admitted the scholarships were modest, just a few $1,000s, not the transformative support the foundation advertised. The annual gala, scheduled for October, was quietly canceled. Donors started demanding refunds. Board members resigned. And then the real blow came. The IRS opened its own investigation. Foundation tax-exempt status was conditional on actually being charitable. If the IRS determined the Connecticut Women's Foundation existed primarily to benefit the Randall family, they could revoke the exemption and assess decades of back taxes. Carol Randall aged 10 years in 2 months. Her charity, her social standing, her reputation, all of it evaporated. Society friends who'd fawned over her at garden parties now avoided her. The newspapers that had covered her philanthropic work now covered her fraud. Damon sent her a single bouquet of flowers when the IRS investigation was announced. The card read, "Children suffer every day. It's life." Carol Randall would know exactly who sent it. Harris Randall was the final target, and the most personal. He'd laughed when Damon called about Lily. Should have had better insurance. Well, Harris was about to learn about insurance the hard way. Damon had spent months researching the Harbor Commons fire. The property had burned down 18 months ago, during renovation. The official cause was electrical fire. The insurance payout was $12 million. Harris Randall had written the policy. The developer, Waldo Dean, was now under indictment for an unrelated insurance fraud in New Haven. That case had revealed Dean's pattern. Buy properties, overinsure them, create situations where they'd be damaged or destroyed, collect payouts. The question was whether Harris had known. If he'd written the policy in good faith, he was clean. If he'd been part of the scheme, he was guilty of insurance fraud. Damon couldn't prove Harris was involved, but he could create enough smoke to start a fire. He started by finding the fire investigator who'd ruled Harbor Commons an accident. His name was Junior Patterson, a veteran investigator with the Bridgeport Fire Department. Damon tracked him down at a local diner. "I don't talk about active cases," Junior said when Damon approached. "Harbor Commons isn't active. It's closed. Ruled accidental. Then there's nothing to talk about. Even if the developer is now under investigation for running the same scheme on different properties." Junior's expression shifted slightly. "Who are you?" "Someone who thinks maybe Harbor Commons deserves a second look." Junior was quiet for a long moment. "Off the record, I never liked that ruling. The fire started in 3 separate locations. The electrical explanation was possible, but barely. But there wasn't enough evidence for arson, and the insurance company accepted the report. Case closed. What if I told you the insurance agent who wrote the policy had a relationship with the developer? What if they'd done multiple deals together? I'd say that's interesting, but not proof of anything. What if the insurance agent is currently under his own regulatory investigation for pushing questionable investments?" Junior leaned back. "Now you've got my attention." Damon laid out everything he knew about Harris Randall's relationship with Waldo Dean. They'd done 3 major commercial policies together over 5 years. Harris had received massive commissions on all of them. 2 of the properties had filed claims, one for storm damage, one for the fire. The payouts totaled $18 million. "That's a pattern," Junior said slowly. "That's a conspiracy. You got proof?" "Not yet. But if someone were to reopen the Harbor Commons investigation, and if that someone were to look at the insurance policy details, the communication between Harris Randall and Waldo Dean, the timeline of when the policy was written versus when the fire occurred, they might find something. They might. Junior Patterson didn't promise anything, but 2 weeks later, the Bridgeport Fire Department announced it was reviewing several historical fire investigations in light of new information about patterns of insurance fraud. Harbor Commons was on the list. Simultaneously, Damon made an anonymous call to the Connecticut Insurance Department, outlining his concerns about Harris Randall's relationship with Waldo Dean. He provided documentation of their multiple deals, the claim's history, the timing. The insurance department opened an investigation. But Damon wasn't done. The regulatory investigation would take months, maybe years. Harris might survive it with a slap on the wrist. Damon wanted immediate impact, so he went to Harris's employer. Consolidated Insurance Partners was a regional firm that prided itself on ethical practices and regulatory compliance. They had zero tolerance for any hint of impropriety. Damon sent an anonymous letter to the CEO, outlining Harris Randall's relationship with Waldo Dean, the questionable policies, the pattern of claims. He included copies of public records, news articles about Dean's indictment, and a simple question: does CIP really want to be associated with someone who might be involved in systematic insurance fraud? The CEO launched an internal investigation. Harris was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. The message was clear. Harris was toxic. His commissions, his big deals, his competitive victories, all of it was now under suspicion. Harris tried to fight back. He claimed he'd been a victim of Dean's fraud, that he'd written policies in good faith. But the pattern was damning. Even if he was innocent, he'd been sloppy enough to be used by a known fraudster multiple times. CIP terminated him 6 weeks later. The official reason was violation of due diligence protocols, but everyone in the industry understood what it meant. Harris Randall was unemployable in insurance. Damon heard through autumn that Harris was scrambling, trying to find work, burning through savings. The new house he'd been building was halted mid-construction. He couldn't get financing anymore. His wife was furious. His kids had a transfer from private school. And through it all, Harris couldn't figure out how it had happened. The investigations had seemed to come from nowhere, all at once, from multiple directions. He never thought to look at the son-in-law he dismissed as a failure. 18 months after Lily's surgery, the Randall family was in ruins. Howard Randall had lost his firm, his license, and most of his personal wealth to lawsuits and settlements. The cruise he'd been saving for? Canceled indefinitely. He'd had to sell the Greenwich estate to cover legal costs, and was now living in a modest condo in Stamford. Carol Randall was facing potential criminal charges for charity fraud. The Connecticut Women's Foundation had been dissolved. Her social standing was destroyed. Friends who'd celebrated her philanthropy now crossed the street to avoid her. Harris Randall was working a car dealership in New Haven, selling used cars on commission. He'd lost his house, his career, his status. His wife had filed for divorce, and Autumn was collateral damage. Her trust fund had been tied up in her father's legal battles. The art gallery had closed. She was living with her parents in their downsized condo, working retail for the first time in her life. Damon felt no guilt. He'd given them every opportunity to be decent people. When Lily was dying, they'd had a choice. They'd chosen cruises and houses and status over a 7-year-old girl's life. Now they knew what it felt like to lose everything. But the story wasn't over yet. Damon and Rosalie had grown closer over the months. Their weekly coffee meetings had evolved into dinners, then weekend outings with Lily. Rosalie and Lily had bonded immediately. Lily called her Aunt Rosalie and lit up whenever she was around. One evening, after Lily was asleep, Rosalie said, "I know what you did." Damon had been expecting this conversation. Which part? All of it. Howard's investment fraud investigation. Carol's foundation scandal. Harris's insurance problems. That wasn't coincidence. That was you. Damon didn't deny it. They destroyed themselves. I just helped the process along. That's a hell of a rationalization. Is it? Everything I did was legal. I didn't plant evidence. I didn't lie to investigators. I just made sure the right people knew about things the Randalls were actually doing. Rosalie was quiet, thinking. The blockchain startup that Howard invested in. That was you. I built a real company. It failed because it wasn't viable. That happens every day in tech. But you knew it would fail. I suspected. I didn't know for certain. Damon. Rosalie's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not judging you. After what they did, after what I've learned about them, I think they got what they deserved. But I need to know who you are. Because my son likes you. Lily adores you. And I care about you. Damon met her eyes. I'm someone who protects the people I love. I'm someone who believes actions have consequences. I'm someone who won't let cruelty go unanswered. Even if it means becoming cruel yourself. I didn't hurt anyone who didn't hurt me first. I didn't take anything they weren't already taking from others. I just held up a mirror and made them look at themselves. Rosalie considered this. My ex-husband used to say I was too soft, that I let people take advantage of me. Maybe I do. Maybe that's why I gave you my savings, because I can't stand to watch people suffer. But you're the opposite. You see suffering, and you make sure the people who caused it suffer too. Is that a bad thing? I don't know, Rosalie said honestly. But I think maybe the world needs both of us. People like me to help pick up the pieces, and people like you to make sure the pieces came from somewhere meaningful. 3 months later, Damon and Rosalie started dating officially. 6 months after that, they moved in together. Lily was ecstatic. She'd been not so subtly campaigning for this outcome for months. Damon's business was recovering. The divorce settlement had been favorable, and without the constant pressure to impress the Randalls, he found he could focus on projects he actually cared about. He started getting referrals, building a reputation for creative, thoughtful architectural design. Rosalie had paid off her son's medical school loans with the money Damon had repaid her. She'd insisted, despite his protests. Wes was thriving in his residency, specializing in pediatric cardiology. Inspired by a certain patient, he'd said with a grin, looking at Lily. The final piece of the story came on a cold December afternoon, 1 week before Christmas. Damon was in his office when his secretary buzzed. There's an Autumn Valentine here to see you. Well, Autumn Randall. She says it's urgent. Damon hadn't spoken to his ex-wife in 6 months, not since the final custody arrangement had been settled. He considered turning her away, but curiosity won out. Autumn looked terrible. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by off-the-rack basics. Her hair, always perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She'd aged years and months. Thank you for seeing me, she said, sitting down without invitation. What do you want, Autumn? I want to understand why you destroyed my family. Damon laughed without humor. Your family destroyed themselves. I just documented it. Bullshit. The timing was too perfect. All 3 of them, all at once. That was you. Prove it. Autumn's eyes filled with tears. I can't. No one can. That's what's so brilliant about it, isn't it? You made it look like natural consequences. But it wasn't natural. It was orchestrated. Why are you here? Because I need to know if it was worth it. My father lost everything. My mother might go to prison. My brother is selling cars. Was your revenge worth destroying all of them? Damon leaned forward. Let me tell you what happened, Autumn. Lily needed $12,000 to live. Your father told me he was saving for a cruise. Your mother told me children die every day. Your brother laughed and said I should have had better insurance. And you defended them. I was trying to keep the peace. You were choosing them over your own daughter. Over me. Over everything we'd built together. They're my family. So was I. So was Lily. But when it mattered, when we actually needed them, they chose themselves. Every single time. So yes, Autumn, it was worth it. Because they showed me exactly who they were, and I believed them. Autumn wiped her tears. I'm working at Target now. Did you know that? Stocking shelves for $12 an hour. My friends don't call anymore. The art gallery closed. I'm living with my parents in a 2-bedroom condo. I'm sorry your life is hard. But that's not my fault, and it's not my problem. Is it Lily's problem? She asks about her grandparents. She wants to see them. That gave Damon pause. Lily did ask about them occasionally. Children were forgiving in ways adults couldn't be. If Lily wants to see them, supervised visits can be arranged. But through the court. Not through you. They're not monsters, Damon. They made a terrible mistake. They were wrong. But they don't deserve this. That's where we disagree, Damon said quietly. They made a choice. They chose money over their granddaughter's life. Actions have consequences. Autumn stood up. I hope you're happy with Rosalie. I hope she never sees the side of you that did this. Because this vengeful, calculating, cruel person, that's not the man I married. No, Damon agreed. The man you married spent 10 years trying to earn your family's approval. I'm not him anymore. After she left, Damon sat in his office for a long time. He thought about who he'd been before Lily's surgery. Eager to please, desperate to fit in, willing to accept crumbs of approval from people who'd never truly respected him. He thought about who he was now. Harder, more calculated, willing to do what was necessary to protect what mattered. Was it worth it? He thought about Lily, healthy and happy, playing with Rosalie in the apartment they now shared. He thought about Rosalie, who'd given everything to save a child she didn't know. He thought about the Randalls, who'd chosen vacations and houses over that same child. Yes, it was worth it. 2 years after the surgery, Lily turned 9. They threw a party at the apartment. Nothing fancy, just pizza and cake and a dozen of her friends from school. Rosalie had made a heart-shaped cake, decorated with pink frosting and sprinkles. Because you have the strongest heart of anyone I know, Rosalie said, hugging Lily. Wes was there, taking a rare break from his residency. He'd brought his girlfriend, a fellow medical student. They were talking about opening a low-cost clinic in an underserved neighborhood after graduation. Damon watched them all, Lily laughing with her friends, Rosalie organizing games, Wes talking passionately about helping people, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My father had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. I thought you'd want to know. It was from Autumn. Howard Randall was in the hospital. Damon stared at the message for a long moment. He thought about calling, about going to see him, about being the bigger person. Then he thought about Howard's voice on the phone. We're saving for our Mediterranean cruise. He deleted the message and put his phone away. Later that night, after the party was over and Lily was asleep, Rosalie found him sitting on the balcony. You okay? She asked, sitting beside him. Howard had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. Rosalie was quiet. Are you going to see him? No. Damon. He made his choice. I'm making mine. Rosalie took his hand. You're not responsible for what happened to them. You know that, right? They did that to themselves. I know. Do you? Because sometimes I see this look in your eyes like you're still fighting them in your head. Damon squeezed her hand. I'm not fighting them anymore. I'm just done with all of it. I want to focus on this. On us. On Lily. On building something good instead of tearing down something bad. That's all I wanted to hear. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, the Randalls were dealing with their consequences. Howard in a hospital bed, Carol facing trial, Harris scraping by, Autumn working retail. Damon didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel guilty. He just felt finished. The next morning, he woke up to Lily jumping on the bed, Rosalie laughing and trying to stop her. They made pancakes together, the three of them working around each other in the small kitchen. It was chaotic and messy and perfect. This was what the Randalls had tried to take from him. This simple, ordinary happiness. The chance to watch his daughter grow up. The opportunity to build a life with someone who actually valued him. They'd failed. Damon had won. Not because he destroyed them. That was just justice. He'd won because he'd built something better from the ashes. He'd found someone who gave everything without asking for anything in return. He'd learned what real family meant. And he'd taught his daughter the most important lesson he knew. The people who truly love you will sacrifice for you. The people who don't will always find an excuse. Lily would never forget that her grandparents said no when she was dying, but a stranger said yes. She'd carry that knowledge with her. Let it shape who she became. That was Damon's real victory. Not the Randalls' downfall, but Lily's future. 6 months later, Damon proposed to Rosalie in the same hospital corridor where they'd first met. He brought Lily with him, and she helped present the ring. Rosalie said yes through tears. They were married in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Wes walked his mother down the aisle. Lily was the flower girl. There were no Randalls in attendance. At the reception, Wes gave a toast. My mom always taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they have, it's what they're willing to give. She proved that when she gave everything she had to save a little girl she'd never met. And Damon proved it by spending 2 years repaying every penny, even though Mom didn't ask for it. These are people who understand value. Real value. The kind you can't put a price on. After the toast, after the dancing, after Lily had fallen asleep in a chair, Damon and Rosalie stood outside the venue. No regrets. Rosalie asked, "About marrying you?" "Never." "About the other thing?" "The Randalls." Damon considered. No regrets. They had a choice. They made it. I just made sure they understood the consequences. You're a scary man sometimes, Damon Valentine. Only to people who cross me. Rosalie kissed him. Good thing I'm on your side. Years later, when Lily was 17 and applying to colleges, she wrote her admissions essay about the nurse who'd saved her life. About the stranger who'd cared more than blood relatives. About learning that family is defined by actions, not genetics. She ended the essay with a line that made Damon cry when he read it. "My father taught me that real strength isn't physical or financial. It's knowing who you are, what you value, and what you're willing to fight for. He's the strongest person I know because when it mattered most, he fought for me." Lily got into every school she applied to. She chose Johns Hopkins, following in Wes's footsteps to study medicine. "I want to help people like Aunt Rosalie helped me," she said. On her first day of college, Damon helped her move into her dorm. As they unpacked, she said casually, "I know what you did to the Randalls." Damon froze. "What?" "I'm not stupid, Dad. I figured it out years ago. The timing, the investigations, all of it. You destroyed them." "Lily, I'm not mad. I'm grateful. They chose a cruise over my life. You chose me over everything. That's what parents do. That's what real love does." She hugged him, and Damon realized his daughter had inherited more than his eyes. She'd inherited his sense of justice, his understanding that actions have consequences, his refusal to let cruelty go unanswered. The Randalls had thought they were teaching him a lesson about planning, about consequences, about knowing his place. Instead, they created someone who understood exactly how to dismantle them. And now Lily understood it too. Years later, when Rosalie died peacefully in her sleep at 73, surrounded by family, Damon thought about the nurse who'd sat down next to him in a hospital corridor and changed everything. She'd given him $9,400 when she had no reason to. She'd shown him what generosity looked like, what real family looked like, what love looked like. At her funeral, Damon told the story of how they met, how she'd saved Lily's life, how she'd shown him that the people who matter most aren't always the ones you're born to. Lily spoke too, now a successful cardiac surgeon herself. "Rosalie taught me that medicine isn't about making money or building a career. It's about sitting down next to someone in their darkest moment and saying, 'I'll help.' She lived that every day, and because of her, so do I." After the service, Damon stood by Rosalie's grave. He thought about the life they'd built, the family they'd created, the love they'd shared. He thought about the Randalls, who'd lost everything chasing money and status. And he thought about the choice that had started it all, his daughter's life or a Mediterranean cruise. The Randalls had chosen wrong. They'd paid for it with everything they valued. Damon had chosen right, and he'd been rewarded with everything that actually mattered. That was the difference between them. That was justice. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.